Day 8 of Ryan's Midlife Crisis Journal. Today, I'll start off with a tip. I think so I'm going to lead off with maybe not every time, but my plan is to lead off with a tip for each of these now as a way to share some of the wisdom I've picked up in my 37 years on Earth. And today's tip, which I might need to use at some point, is if you see it's what to do when you see a bear. I've come within 10 feet of bears before. If you see a black bear, which is almost certainly what you'll see if you're in the northeastern United States, you're supposed to be big, tall, and loud. Now, if you see a grizzly bear or a brown bear, then you're supposed to play dead. And black bears, and grizzly bears are usually brown. Black bears are usually black or brown. The main way to tell the difference actually between them is more so the snout. The grizzly bear is going to have more of a pronounced like brow down into the snout, where the black bear is more going to be like more of a long face, more like a dog face, I guess you'd say. But they can be pretty big. So a pretty big one come through here, like exactly where I'm sitting, a bit over a year ago. About a year ago. So yesterday I was watching some videos on actually the Man Talks channel, which, to be honest, when it comes to these like man spaces, man talk things, I always thought that going men focused spaces was kind of emasculine, I guess you could say, because I don't know, I always thought finding a common interest that's a thing is the best way to hang out with other guys, because that's kind of what men do. So joining a club that was more around a hobby as opposed to joining like a men's club for sake of being men was always more appealing to me, because then you have the hobby to kind of bond over as opposed to just bonding over being dudes. I don't know what else to talk about being dudes. It seems kind of, I don't know wouldn't want to be interested in joining like a Lions club. I don't even know how you join a Lions club. Those seem like men's clubs. Maybe there's more community service clubs. I guess like men's retreats is where I'm just like, just thinking about the SNL skit. How's the penis? All right, so anyway, I was thinking about, on the Man Talks channel, there's a video on inner child work. It was a very good video. And it talks about, well, I think the Nietzsche quote summarizes the best, is what's hidden in the father is revealed in the son. And that with a lot of people, a lot of guys, you're trying to be, as an adult, you're trying to be what your father lacked for your inner child. And so in my case, I'd say that my dad was very reserved and certain ways. So for example, my inner child wants someone to, get up in front of the crowd and speak. And to be honest, my dad would never do things like that, and I feel pretty proud, I guess, when I do it. So I like that. To my wife's detriment, my dad didn't really stop my mom from nagging and being kind of a pain a lot of the time. So he didn't really set boundaries with her. Now, obviously, it's your wife. You do that. It's not like a stranger or like a coworker or something like that. Well, you don't want to dress down a coworker either. But I feel like at sometimes my mom was free to be a little bit too crazy, and even though my wife is, I think, way more sane than my mom was, is definitely way more sane than my mom is, that she's at the point where she's nagging me too much or is doing any of those, I guess in some cases, like the stereotypical annoying mom stuff or annoying wife stuff, I'll tend to not respond well more quickly. Now, not like anything extreme or anything. I would just be unhappy about it. And sometimes she's like, "Hey, you're kind of going hard on. I feel like you're going hard on me for this." And that's I probably have been, and I think I know why. Is because I saw my dad just, you know, not doing anything to curtail my mom when she's being unreasonable, arguing with me when I'm like especially like a teenager, but like, starting to be like probably pre-teenage and things like that. Like if we're having an argument and I clearly have a logical position, my dad wouldn't necessarily support me. He would always be trying to not upset her too much. So, yeah. But the biggest thing with the inner child work is my parents weren't big on like playing games and stuff. Like it was, not only did I not have, it took me about till high school to have like a great group of friends growing up, and friends we would like do video games, board games, all that stuff, and it was great. I treasure my group of friends, maybe especially so because it took me a bit to have like a nice tight group of friends. But also because the way my family dynamic worked, we didn't have a lot of family friends. My parents didn't have that many friends, and we weren't especially good at having friends or at finding friends unless we were in a place for a little bit of time. Wasn't that outgoing of a kid. Another video talking about how I was pretty inhibited, but spent a lot of time with relatives. My dad was one of 6 kids, and amongst my cousins, which I had a lot of cousins, I was the oldest, and there was a very stark divide between my parents' generation and my generation. So I was always like, for example, always the oldest one at the kids' table. But sometimes it was almost like the kids, where it's like sometimes it almost felt like we were like show dogs a little bit. Like they'd be watching us play and do stuff. And my closest peer would be my sister, who is almost 2 years younger than me. Imagine like a 12-year-old kid. How much am I going to have in common with a 10-year-old girl, and then a 7-year-old boy cousin, and then my other sister would have been like 6, and another cousin then who would have been also like 6. We saw them a lot, but it's, not exactly going to play a competitive board game with them until they're a lot older. And my parents really didn't do that much either. So I used to entertain myself. I would set up games of Risk with myself, for example, which Risk is not a great game by modern standards, but it still can be fun with a group of friends. So my inner child is longing for me to be the dad to play games with them more, which explains why I have a huge board game collection. I really appreciate it anyway, that all the inner child work talk, because it seemed to land very squarely for me. It makes me wonder too, I have kids. I got 2 sons. How much of this is cyclical and unavoidable? Because I would like for there not to be something largely missing from how I father my kids. And in some ways, I only really know the blind spots of my dad, and my wife would say the same thing about her parents, well, and my mom too. So it's like we know where our parents were missing the mark a little bit, and we fill in the gaps. If we have different experiences, where my wife's parents may have been like too focused on their friends, for example, and mine didn't have any, like it's easy to calibrate and say like where you want to land in the middle for your kids. But when they're both extreme in a way, it's tough to know how to balance it. It's tough to calibrate if you don't have the high and the low, or the left and the right, to go and find what you want to do. So, yeah, I don't know. I guess the best you can do is just be aware, and try to minimize it. And if you're doing a good job, that means that the challenges and the perils and the inner child work, inner child dissatisfaction that each generation goes through, ideally, on average, kind of reduces generation after generation. And I do think my parents have done that. To be fair to them, I don't want to crap on them more than is relevant for this video. So anyway, that's what I was thinking about today. And, well, yesterday. I just woke up. Day 8 in the books. And so far, no sight of a bear.